The Hakawati Forum, Reconstruction by Narratives. My practice is focused on using tangible and intangible media to construct events that condense and overlay spatial narratives onto new contemporary contexts. It looks at heritage as a prospective activity rather than a retrospective one, to understand the different forces at play in urban spaces and make counterforms of testimony audible. Hakawati in Arabic is the storyteller. As well as a venue for fictional storytelling, the Hakawati Coffee House would once hold commentaries on the community's state of affairs, often adapting its narrative to address local conflicts. Now it has become a dying tradition. Abu Omar is sitting in his apartment in Aleppo after it was hit by a missile. He is in denial, listening to an old Arabic tune by Syrian singer Muhammad Din on his record player. He travels through his memories, defying the state of the environment around him. Broadcasting has constantly been used as a medium to express and tackle Aleppo's multi-layered conflicts. The planning conflict. The Syrian government's post-war reconstruction plan aims to demolish existing informal neighborhoods and rebuild them for groups supporting the regime. This consolidates political power dynamics and deepens segregation. Coincidentally, these areas were the most affected by the war. YouTube had risen to be the main broadcaster of its destruction, with footage gathered from Aleppo's different neighborhoods. The generational conflict. Aleppo's lost spaces only exist through memories and pre-recorded footage. Diasporic groups started resorting to broadcasting as a form of cultural preservation with the initiation of online archives. The gender conflict. Throughout the war, feminist stations have emerged, combating the underlying gender biases within Sharia law and social systems that place restrictions and limitations on women. In the context of cultural heritage being destroyed by conflict, citing Aleppo as a recent case, how can we broadcast event and narrative to reconstruct the city's spaces and question gender, generational, and planning conflicts, ultimately influencing a more inclusive policy change? Looking at storytelling and broadcasting as a medium of revealing social and political conditions, BBC's radio drama Hayy al-Matar focuses on building discourses around socio-political conflicts in Syria by constructing multilateral narratives. Within this form of practice, the Hakawati Forum comprises 4 phases. Phase 1, the collection of stories. Phase 2, the composition of narratives. Phase 3, the event. And Phase 4, the broadcast. Phase 1 hosts initial group sessions with local and diasporic Aleppians to share their personal stories. Phase 2 constructs fictional narratives by intersecting the personal stories from Phase 1. The narratives deal with different nuances of underlying conflict, 3 of which are gender, generational, and planning. In Phase 3, these narratives are spatially scripted onto 3 levels, adapting the Hakawati storytelling structure that follows a clear hierarchy with one story embedded into the next. The first level is context, the lost space within which the narrative takes place. The event is built around an augmented soundscape that revives the lost spaces, bringing about many voices and building new pathways for the recollection of memories. Set in an arbitrary hangar in Amman, the event opens up the possibility of adapting any neutral space in other locations. The event can take on any conflict, be it generational or planning or any other. For this presentation, I will be focusing on gender. The accumulated layers of the city are condensed into the hangar to shape a narrative that puts different aspects of the city in dialogue. The space becomes a platform where layers of conflict are translated into layers of narrative. Participants were invited to the hangar to listen to a series of augmented soundscapes. The spatial layers of the narrative were manifested as a result of the actions of the participant, who navigated the space wearing headphones. Some more tangible elements, like objects referencing Aleppo, are layered onto the space to anchor the augmented. Welcome to the Hakawati Forum. Today we will be discussing gender conflicts within the city of Aleppo with the aim of building strategies to overcome spatial, social, and institutional prejudices. We will be focusing on the presence and role of the Aleppian woman within 4 spaces: the souk, the mosque, the family, and the Sufi ritual. Corresponding to the Hakawati structure, The narratives fit according to scale into the 3 levels of the space. Level 1 is the context, looking at the gender prejudices that exist in Suq al-Medina, or the Aleppo market. Level 2 is the individual and institutional perspectives that construct the narrative. Level 3 is the reconstructed narrative. Each narrative is provoked by the Hakawati, who is the playmaker in the space and whose task is to intervene and ask the participant questions that would shift the narrative from its original scenario.
كيفكن؟ أنا أم يوسف. جوزي مرض كتير وصار عنده فشل كلوي، وأنا ما معي لا شهادات ومالي دارسة وما بعرف ولا مصلحة، وبلشت جر هالعرباية ولف حوالين هالسوق كل يوم لبيع هالكعكات اللي كنت جيبهم من فندق سميرة ميس. كنت أقضي 8 ساعات وأنا بلفلف بهالعرباية لحتى بيعهم، وإجري تورموا، وكمان ما كنت استرجي أدخل جوات السوق لأنه مو من عاداتنا ولا من تقاليدنا إنه المرأة تكون بياعة. هلكت وأنا عم حاول أطلب من لجنة السوق يصلحوا عربايتي وقت خربت، بس ما حدا كان يرد علي.
Should Yusuf have confronted the suit? Considering she's not part of Ahl al-Suq, how should the suit committee have responded? How would you disrupt the narrative? What policies should be placed?
Sounds are sampled from pre-war YouTube footage and looped to construct a modular composition. The sampled sounds are placed in the augmented space at particular points. Each sound has its own broadcast radius and loop duration, so it is experienced differently every time. The mosque narrative.
الله أكبر الله أكبر.
أنا عايشة، كنت أجي على هالجامع مع أبي عباس وأخواتي جعفر ووليد لما كنت صغيرة. كان أبي وأخواتي يدخلوا الجامع من المدخل الرئيسي اللي شايفينه تحت، وأنا كنت أدخل من الباب الخلفي. كنت أترك مشايتي عند درجات قبل ما أدخل باب الجامع وصلي في منطقة النساء. كنت بشوف الإمام من هون بس هو ما كان يشوفنا.
Do you agree with mosques segregating women from men, or do you think they should pray together? With the restrictions on where women can pray, would you have made a point about joining men in mosques, or would you have compromised and prayed at home?
The hopscotch narrative.
مرحبا، أنا حلا. نحن مثل مو شايفين واقفين محل ما كنت ألعب أنا وصغيرة لعبة الأكس بحارتنا بالأنصاري. كنت أرسم هالشكل بالطبشور على الأرض وألعب بالساعات مع الحجار. سحبوني من هون وأنا عمري 15 سنة وحجبوني وجوزوني بواحد اسمه جابر وكان أكبر مني ب20 سنة. قعدت من تم ساكت لأنه بعرف إنه صوتي ما لازم يطلع ولا يكون عندي رأي. أنا ضليت قاعدة وساكتة لحد ما صارت هالحرب عنا وغيرت كل شي بحياتي. صرت أقدر أطلع وفوت بكل جرأة بدون خوف من شي، حتى من الحرب نفسها، لأنه الرجال تخبوا خوف من الاعتقالات العشوائية. وهيك انقلبت الآية وصاروا النسوان يطلعوا ويجيبوا أغراض ويدبروا حالهم، وصرت أنا المسؤولة عن كل شيء. أنا مشيت مع أولادي بالخط مثل مو شايفين قدامكم بلعبة الإكس للهروب من حلب لعمان.
The war has given certain women more independence in the absence of men. Do you think women would be able to retain this independence after the war? How? The Sharia law in Syria still allows underage marriages with consent. Do you feel girls at that age are capable of making their own decisions? Do you think girls subdued by their family's pressure have a choice?
The Sufi ritual narrative. الزاوية الهلالية.
السلام عليكم، أنا ربا. كنت كل يوم جمعة بعد الظهر وقف هون برا بالزاوية الهلالية وتسمع على أحلى الموشحات من أغاني حلقات الذكر. كنت وقف هون وشوف الرجال طالعين بعد الصلاة بالجامع لابسين جلابيات بيضة ومعطرين بمية الورد والمسك والعنبر ورايحين للزاوية الهلالية. مرة التقيت بالدكتور جمال الدين الهلالي قائد حلقات الذكر وسألته إذا بحسن احضر جلسة من الجلسات، وقال لي إنه ما بصير النساء يحضروا مع إنه ما في ولا نص بالقرآن بيمنع إنه النساء تحضر. صرت ابعت ابني يحيى حتى اجلس على الدرجات وتسمع.
Only men are allowed in Sufi chants. If women would want to participate, do you think they should set up their own space? Traditionally, only men's voices are allowed in the chants. Do you think women should push for having their voices heard?
The Hakawati Forum by nature can shift its narratives to other conflicts. Phase 4 is the broadcast. It broadcasts radio plays based on the narratives from the event. The broadcast invites stakeholders who would not usually meet, say an urban planner, a feminist, and a sheikh, to a structured discourse around provocations that rise from the stories and ways through which personal experiences are interwoven with institutional realities. It is a scaled-up version of the Hakawati space, broadcasting to a wider audience where the home becomes a parallel experience to the hangar.